Hello and welcome to your weekly aircraft global market update. It's Friday, October 20th, 2023. My, oh my, do we have an episode for you today. Please like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share these videos as much as possible. We're trying to create an open collective of owners and pilots to create and bring transparency to the used aircraft market that just doesn't seem to exist. Where can we get honest information? We're starting to see comments inside of our videos, and we really appreciate that. We're getting emails, and so basically what we were hoping for is starting here. So thanks to Ken and John Mark and Racer and Hal for your questions and comments this last week. Keep them coming. As a quick warning here, just want to point this out. We are not brokers. We're not lawyers. We're not tax accountants. This is our opinions and opinions only. We're experienced aircraft owners and buyers, and that's it. So please don't take this as advice or consulting. This is our opinion as we react to the used aircraft market on controller. As always, let the buyer beware. And again, take this as our opinion only. News and overall sentiment this week. Whoa, Jerome Powell dropped a landmine a couple of days ago. Folks were thinking he was going to be mostly dovish, but after the retail sales were basically through the roof and beating expectations, seems like our Fed may be raising interest rates again. This is something the market was not prepared for. We saw stocks sell off. Heck, we saw everything sell off. We saw bonds sell off. We saw even energy. Oil has been climbing with this war in the Middle East, and even oil the last day and a half has been dropping after Powell's speech. So last few days, there has been no safe harbor for wealth. Real estate market is still at a standstill as high mortgage rates push home sales into decline, tracking to hit great recession levels. Spoke last week that I've had firsthand experience with some real estate deals going south. People are having a hard time getting financing right now. And if they do get financing, sometimes that financing falls through. The banks are skittish. So lots of global turmoil right now, lots of unrest, lack of confidence and consumer confidence in the markets. That is going to lead to downward pressure, I believe, moving into 2024, especially if we have interest rate hikes coming. Credit card bills are going to go up. Adjustable rate mortgages, short-term mortgage rates or short-term loan rates are going to go up. Heck, we have banks that are, writing off billions and billions of dollars because of their losses in the bond market. So lots of downward pressure coming. Okay, we're going to move through this pretty quick. This is something new that we have for this week as we're getting to the end of this year. Wanted to go over some bonus depreciation and tax information for you. I think this is very good knowledge to have in your back pocket right now while you're deciding, should I acquire an aircraft right now? My accountant, my tax attorney, they're telling me we need a deduction, and should we go for one right now? Well, let me first say this. First of all, IRS scrutiny, if they audit you on aircraft and writing off aircraft, it's extremely difficult to pass. I have been through many, many audits, and I can tell you they're not easy to pass with airplanes. In fact, I will tell you this, and again, this is not advice or counsel. This is just, hey, consider me a friend talking to another, sharing my opinion. If you have access to your aircraft, it is going to be very difficult to write off. That's just the simple end of it. In the years where I had zero access to my aircraft and somebody else was basically utilizing it exclusively and leasing it, that was really easy to write off. It's very difficult for the IRS to say you have a personal use or hobby loss or whatever they want to argue on an aircraft you have no access to that is being leased and earning cash for you. But if you're splitting the time and you're using it personally some of the time and you're using it for your business some of the time, first of all, the IRS only wants you to deduct, from what I understand, up to a first-class ticket. So that's not going to get you much off of your airplane. But on top of that, if you're mixing and matching business and pleasure, they really frown upon that, and usually they'll end up taking the complete deductions away. And that's not even to consider the fact that we are in the fourth quarter here. And so if you're going to try and depreciate and deduct something now, you actually have to put it into service right now. You actually have to find some way to earn an income or have a valid business use beyond a first-class airline ticket in order to deduct an aircraft. So I personally don't love putting aircraft into service in Q4. I think it creates an audit issue in the future. And the only reason I'm bringing this up now is because we are in October. The end of the third quarter is past. We're well into the fourth quarter now, and folks are making these kinds of decisions now. So I'm just going to put this out there for two reasons. One, because you've got an uphill battle putting it into service. And number two, let's talk about depreciation and what you're actually going to get. Take a look at column 2 here. In 2023, there is still 80% bonus depreciation. So you buy a $500,000 aircraft, you can still write as down as an expense $400,000 of that this year. You buy a $4 million aircraft, you can write off $3.2 million of that in the first year as an expense. And again, opinion only, can't say that enough. It used to be 100%. Now it's 80. In 2024, it goes to 60%. What does that mean? If you need a bigger deduction next year, you'll need to acquire a bigger aircraft. So for example, this year on a $1.5 million aircraft, we can write down as an expense $1.2 million. But next year we have to spend $2 million to get that same $1.2 million write down, which you see in column 4, adjacent to the $2 million under 2024. And then in 2025, you're going to have to spend $3 million to get that same write down. So why do I mention all of this? Well, let's say you are thinking of acquiring an aircraft right now, but the aircraft you are looking at isn't exactly what you want. Maybe it's down a model or two because everything is so expensive. You're thinking, this is what I need to get. Let's just talk jets. Let's say you're looking at a Mustang and you think that's all you can afford right now because Mustangs are selling for like $2 million, which is crazy. And sometimes $2.5 million. When a few years ago, you were really close to M2 territory at $2 million. Well, what if the prices go down next year? All right. The point I'm making here is the depreciation you are going to acquire here in 2023 going to offset the potential reduction in aircraft pricing that may or may not allow you to get into the aircraft of your dreams next year or the following year? You may want to consider waiting and holding out. The market is growing with more and more used aircraft every day. That's a lot of downward pressure as 60% bonus depreciation hits next year with potential interest rate hikes. Good Lord, this is a lot of downward pressure on prices. So last thing I'll mention on this screen, just to help you out, this is a general idea of what you can expect in tax savings. And again, this is just an opinion. I don't know that these numbers are exact. I did my best, but can't promise anything. Not a tax accountant here. Go meet with your counsel and have them take a look at this. Let's take a look at a $1.5 million aircraft purchase price, 2023 tax savings in Nevada on the left side of the third column, California on the right side. The only reason I choose those two states is Nevada is a zero income tax state. California has a top end of like 13.8%. I think it's the highest in the nation. So you buy a $1.5 million aircraft in Nevada, you'll be able to write down, well, against your Fed, since Nevada has no income tax, you'll be able to expense or offset about $475,000 in income taxes. In California, it's $640,000. So take a look at this chart. You can pause, rewind. This may help you decide, hey, you may go over this with your accountant and your tax attorney. Maybe it might give you some pointers on budget planning, but I bring this up again to say, hey, you might have a deduction this year with an aircraft if you're smart enough and fast enough to put into service. But if you wait till next year, maybe you can afford the aircraft of your dreams, and that will offset whatever your tax savings would be. Or maybe you can pick up a depreciation somewhere else. Real estate, I hear, might be a good value here coming up in the very near future, especially commercial real estate. All right, let's keep moving along here. Okay, this is another table. Oh my gosh, we can't possibly go over this all right now. But this is another table I just want to bring up, and this is going to show you and give you an idea of some aircraft comparisons and what different aircraft look like and what are their performances. So I wanted to create this for you to give you some metrics if you're comparing, in this example, jets. Okay, so here we go. Let's take a look at this. We're going to start with maybe a Citation Mustang, 1,460 pounds of thrust times 340 knots max cruising speed, service ceiling of 41,000 feet, 385 gallons of fuel. You can take 550 pounds of payload if you load the fuel all the way up. Look at that. It's actually more than the M2. That's why I wanted to create a spreadsheet like this, because some of these comparisons are really interesting. Take a look at this CJ3 Plus. You got 820 pounds max fuel payload, despite the fact that you got 6 seats in the back, 2 up front, 8 really comfortable seats total. That's very light people you're putting in there if you're going to load this up and go the maximum distance, which is published to be about 2,040 nautical miles. The CJ4, on the other hand, can hold 1,122 pounds with full fuel in comparison with the Phenom 300, which can hold 1,142. Look at the difference in thrust on the CJ4 versus the Phenom 300. These are supposed to be comparable airplanes, and the CJ4, for whatever reason, has a few more 100 pounds of thrust per side, so that's quite interesting. This is a column that may or may not be important to you if you're at small airports. Phenom 300 can get off the ground fully loaded at 3,138 feet. But the CJ4 takes longer at 3,410. And even the CJ3 just a little bit longer than the Phenom 300. The Citation M2 longer than the CJ3 Plus. So some good data here. My favorite one is going to be this right here. And this is something I've come up with over time. I've flown a lot of different aircraft, and I'm a numbers guy. And so over time, I have put this together and found that 70% is a very reliable number to put against what manufacturers advertise. And again, this is my opinion only, so don't want to put out false information. This is just what I have found. The Citation Mustang, for example, is published with a range of 1,200. I find that the way most people, myself included, fly it, you're going to get 840 nautical miles out of it. Why? Because I fly at maximum takeoff weight, maximum gross takeoff weight at maximum throttle or maximum forward allowable thrust. And so that seems to lose you about 30% of the range. So this gets real interesting because when you're going on Cessna's website, you're talking to brokers, oh, how far can I fly in the M2? Oh, you can fly 1,550 miles. I can tell you, no, you're going to get about 1085 on this thing if you want reserves when you land. If you're going to load it up and you're going to fly not at long range cruise, which is, 40, 50, 60 knots below its maximum cruise speed, who flies a jet like that? No, you're probably going to get around 1085. Again, that's my opinion from the numbers I have crunched. A CJ3 2040, you'll probably get actually about 1,428 nautical miles. This is no winds, of course. CJ4 1516, look at that, very close to the CJ3 Plus. And the Phenom 300 1400. One of the surprise items here is these Honda jets, which in my opinion have been really unimpressive until the Elite 2. This could be a contender, and let's take a look at why. Okay, fuel capacity, nothing really crazy here, 472 gallons, somewhere just under an M2, in between an M2 and a Mustang. Okay, so what is the max payload like? Whoa, 845 pounds. So more than the Mustang and the M2 and the CJ3. That's pretty incredible. Now, that's a plane where you can use all the seats if that is valid information. But I'll tell you, you go to the Honda Jet website and you take a look at their specs. It was so hard to dig up this information. For whatever reason, they do not like to publish aircraft specifications. So this information was not easy to come by. 3,699 feet for the takeoff, not very impressive. doesn't beat anything. Actually, it's one of the longest aircraft on this screen, although if you're flying a jet, you're probably going to have access to at least a 4,000-foot runway. Just remember, this is on a standardized to sea level day, and you're probably going to be flying jets in a lot warmer conditions and a lot higher than standard sea level ice a day. Okay, let's take a look at the range on the Honda Jet. 1547. That is on par with the Citation M2. So we have to assume, haven't flown the Elite 2, but I have to assume it's going to be about the same. So about 1083 at maximum gross weight. But look at this, you can take more weight and you're burning 20 gallons less fuel. Hey, if that is true, and this is as advertised, this is something to be kind of excited about, a little bit of a difference in innovation in the market. So here's our long-range fuel burn in gallons per mile, shows about, looks like 30.31 gallons per nautical mile, which is on the lower end of anything else you see on the screen here. Let's see, MT fuel burn, gallons per nautical mile, long-range cruise, 0.31. This is max throttle, 0.44. Still one of the best ones on the screen. Which brings us to our efficiency rating. This is a number we put together, kind of coming up with efficiency of the aircraft. Looks like the Honda Jet itself on this screen is one of the most efficient aircraft, followed by the Citation M2, which seems to, if our calculations are correct, really, really beat out both the Phenom 100 and the 100 EV. So quite impressive there. All right, moving along. Overall aircraft performance score. These are just some values we put together, kind of aggregating and amortizing data together. And this will give you some overall scores for the aircraft based on all that criteria. Honda Jet Elite 2 scores about 2,400. And the looks like 2,700 for the CJ3 Plus, 3,132 for the CJ4. And look at that, CJ4 scores higher than the Phenom 300. The CJ3 Plus is just behind the regular Phenom 300 there. Overall aircraft value score, this takes into consideration the average purchase price of one of these. So if you take performance with value, where are you ending up? Well, let's take a look at the Honda Jet Elite now, 2,800, the M2, 2,900. And the let's take a look at the Phenom 300, 3,100. Wow, these numbers are pretty close. So you can see from a value perspective, you start to upgrade an aircraft, you don't get as much of a change in benefit. You know, just like that old aerodynamic rule that when you double your airspeed, you quadruple your drag. Well, same thing with buying more aircraft. You spend a lot more money to not get much more value. Cabin volumes are here, dimensions for you if you're trying to fit one of these things in a hangar, and the number of seats, which they always advertise on the left, but we like to tell you the number of comfortable seats, because no one wants to sit inside of a bathroom on top of a toilet or sideways in a mini jump seat with their head tilted forward as the top of their head hits the top of the cabin in the aircraft. So that's something we wanted to put there for you. You can take a look at the charts there. Again, you can pause, rewind, but we're going to continue. Sorry, I know we spent a lot of time on this today, but it's a new chart and wanted to show it to you. You can always fast forward through these videos to get to the meat that interests you the most. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time here either. This is what you saw on the last page in visual form. So you can see on the bottom left there, jet maximum cruise speed in knots, more is better. Hey, look at that. CJ4 beats out everything on the left. The Phenom 300 EV beats out everything total. That just kind of gives you a visual depiction of what everything looks like. So you can, again, pause, rewind, and come back to that. We had some interest this last week. Thanks a lot to Ken for reaching out about the TBM 910 you're looking at. We've got some information on TBMs for you today. We'll get to that later. Thank you also, John Mark, for your interest in the 850s. Wanted to get some information on the TBMs here for you as well. So you've got some dimensions, cabin size, you've got overall aircraft value scores. And this is really interesting, right? Because what we wanted to point out is how manufacturers try to sell things sometimes. There isn't always a change in an aircraft from one year to another. So where you see blanks, it's because it did not change. So for example, the TBM 50, from what we can tell, service ceilings never changed. The maximum cruise speed has never gotten above 330 knots. And for the 930 and the 940, the thrust appeared to be the same until you get to the 960. You get an extra 45 pounds of thrust. We could be wrong on this information. This is the best of what we can gather. If you spot a mistake, please let us know. We will correct it in the next video. Look at this payload, 891. Then you go to the TBM 930 and it drops 20 pounds. Then it holds. And then you get your 20 pounds back if we are reading and interpreting the information correctly. Takeoff distance at maximum gross takeoff weight, 2380. And that stays the same, and then actually increases in the TBM 960 to 2,535 feet. Really interesting. Range hasn't changed. Of course, 70% range hasn't changed. You can probably expect to get about 1,200 nautical out of these if you're loading them up, assuming our 70% still works. You've got some gallons per nautical mile fuel burn at long range and max cruise, some efficiency ratings, overall score and value score. And so it looks like we pick up quite a bit of value on the TBM 960 at 1,994. And so you wonder why? Well, our payload comes back up. We've got some more horsepower. So maybe all of those things go to attribute towards that value score. Dimensions haven't changed, cabin volume, and 6 seats. So after reviewing this, we've had quite a bit of interest in the 850s, and I can see why now. For the price, look, you got the same ceiling. You're going nearly the same speed. You've got the shortest takeoff distance in a while, a decent range on it. And so I understand why there's been some interest in these videos from folks in the 850 now. All right, we'll keep moving here. Here's the visual depiction. We're just going to give you a short period of time on this screen so you can fast forward, rewind, pause, take a snapshot, whatever you want to do. And without further ado, let's jump into the inventory this week. Looks like, we're going to pause the video and swap this out real quick. We got the last week's one. Sorry, stand by one sec. All right, sorry about that. Let's go back to that screen, and now you can see the drama. Now we've got 1020 in here, 5,022 aircraft for sale. I keep saying this every single week, but every week it is the most aircraft I have ever seen for sale personally on controller. This is incredible. I can't overstate this enough. What you are seeing is history right now. And for those of you that have been patiently awaiting along the sidelines for a better price to come, I got to tell you, personally, I believe it's right around the corner, because I don't think there's 5,022 buyers out there for the aircraft that are on the market. So let's see, 172s pretty much holding steady, 182s increased. SR22s from 308 to 318. I say this every week. How do you differentiate yourself among 318 other aircraft for sale? TTX is up 2 at 12. The Cessna Caravan steady at 18. We brought in Caravans, Kodiaks this week. Hal had some interest, one of our viewers, in Kodiaks and Caravans. So we're going to start tracking that information for you. Thanks for reaching out to us. The Piper Meridian increased to 31 and TBM's down to 40. Again, sometimes it's just listings expiring. I'm sure an aircraft or two is selling here, as we pointed out last week. Even during the Great Depression, stuff still sold. It just sold at the speed of molasses. So let's see, the Raven 2 up 2 at 65, the Robinson 66, 39 to 41. And the Bell 505 steady at 14. And let's see here, continuing on, the Bell 407 up 1 to 24. The Augusta 109 steady at 18. The Bell 429 up 2 to 10 on the market. These small numbers here, these are pretty healthy markets. You might not see too big of pricing adjustments. Like, for example, I was looking at the Kodiaks here, and each model only has a handful of aircraft, and 20 while the fleet's not that big to begin with, and it's very niche, so that does help put downward pressure on pricing. If you're looking for a specific model and there's only 4 or 5 available, well, that creates upward price pressure. So, net, maybe no change there for right now, but it is a niche market, so that's still going to help with the pressure downwards. Cirrus Vision Jets still holding steady, right close to 30 at 28. The Mustang up 2 over the past couple weeks, now 21 for sale on controller. The Phenom 100, 27 to 25. The Honda Jet up 1 to 28. And the M2, 18, been floating right between 18 and 20 for a while now. The CJ3 Plus down 1 to 16. I think it was one that was on our list last week. It was white with orange stripes on it, and maybe it'll come back. We'll see. It could be a listing that expired. Only time will tell. The CJ4 up 1 to 15, and Phenom 300s steady at 29. And here is what your visual depiction looks like of aircraft overall. Isn't that incredible? Look at that chart. It's not just gracefully and slowly increasing. I mean, it's like a darn near 45-degree angle here. The amount of aircraft just coming into the market is a flood. I don't know how to put it any other way. If brokers are telling you, oh, I got buyers on the other line, you better make a decision. I've got somebody coming. I don't know. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's true. Or, that's their job, to create a sense of urgency. And our job here is to try to create some transparency for you, the buyer, so that you can operate with a full side of information, or full amount of information on both sides. Here's your jet aircraft inventory visual depiction. Looks mostly stable or increasing. It looks like the Cirrus Vision Jets are coming down a little bit way back from June. But since September, just pretty much holding steady. Everything else is kind of slowly increasing, kind of upward trends on jets, including that Honda Jet, which you see kind of coming up, as well as the CJ4. Helicopter inventory, pretty stable or increasing, I would say slowly. Great for buyers. I'm hoping this is becoming a buyer's market. We broke out the Cirrus SR22 into its own chart because it was shrinking all these other aircraft markets and just making them look so small and difficult to read. There are just so many SR22s for sale. So it gets its own chart, 318 this week, up from 281 just a couple of months ago. Incredible. Other single engine inventory, we've got 172s on here all the way up through TBMs, including the Kodiak, which we just added this week. And so pretty stable. If anything, I see maybe 172s ticking up a little bit and the TTX going up. Everything else appears to be just pretty stable. All right. Market values and inventory. These are some of the aircraft that we are not going to go over. You can come back to these, take a look at some other videos for what they are, how to read them, and what they represent. This is our best collective of information that we have gathered over time. Lots of experience buying aircraft, flying aircraft, operating aircraft, selling aircraft over the years, and utilizing all of our past purchase data, as well as pretty much everybody we know and can get our hands on, broker relationships, and then utilizing standard historical depreciation curves for aircraft. This is how we at Aircraft Global Market Update value aircraft. So we assign an annual depreciation to it, an hourly depreciation for each hour that's flown, a max value depreciation. They don't seem Bell 407, for example, we don't really see drop below 65% of whatever its brand new price was, which in 2017 was just under $3 million. Then for COVID, for 2020, we threw an inflation adjustment in there, increased everything by about 10%. If there's demand issues with the aircraft, we might drop it here if they've historically been tough to sell. And then at 3,000 hours, we knock off about 7.5% because there's just not a whole lot of buyers out there that want an aircraft with 3,000 hours on it. How you read this is 2015, an aircraft that was brand new would have been right around 2.85 million. And now in 2023, with 500 hours on it, we think it should be about a $2.59 million aircraft. with 2,500 hours on it, probably around a $2.037 million aircraft, and so on. So this is the number of hours that would be on the engines and airframe. And that's how you read those charts. All right. Continue. Please give us comments if you see any errors or any big issues, but we've actually got quite a bit of experience with everything you see here. So hopefully the numbers are fairly accurate, at least to historical standards, not what brokers are going to tell you, not what sellers are going to want to tell you that, they want to get top dollar. They want to sell their aircraft for more than it was when it was brand new. But things weren't always like this. And we hope they go back to where they were in history, where used stuff actually drops in value like it's supposed to. Otherwise, why aren't we all just buying new aircraft? All right, this is new this week, the TBM 850 inventory recap. We threw just a few specimens on here to give you a well-rounded idea of the market, 2008, 2014, a 12, and an 11. We decided to go with 850s across the board because we like the value proposition for those after reviewing our own charts. And so, Jean-Marc, this is for you. And this is the best accurate information, what we could come up with so far, where we think things should be at. If they're not there now, hopefully in the near future. These TBM prices will change in model. For example, in 2023, this is probably like a 960 or something. Way back in 2011, this is, probably, or 2012, this is probably an 800, 850, something like that. So what that means is this chart should accurately, hopefully fairly accurately, change for models as the innovations change and new models are released. Okay, let's take a look at these TBM 850s here. So the 2008 here with 440 hours, $2.395 million. We show that aircraft should be somewhere around $2.25 million. So that's not too far off the mark, 8.8%. It shows that our calculations for values are pretty darn reasonable. That is probably a gap you can close. That's a reasonable buy on that aircraft. Moving on to the 2014 here, listed at 2.795 with 684 hours on it. That is November 5-4 Victor uniform. We place a value on that of about 2.52 million. And remember, this is our aircraft global market update fair market value. This is our opinion. Other companies have special interests. We're not paid by anybody. We're just doing this because we love aviation and we want to see some order get back in the market for you, for us, for everybody, and bring transparency back to it. So VREF probably not going to agree with this. Controller's new tool for valuing aircraft. I mean, they've got to appease their market, and their market is sellers. Sellers are paying to put listings on controller.com. So it behooves them to make their sellers happy by creating high appraisals. Brokers got to give their sellers high appraisals. Otherwise, they're going to want a different broker. So that's why people may not agree with us, but we stand by our numbers, 2.5 million. That's just outside of a great deal or a good deal. If it was under 10%, we'd say, hey, it's a reasonable deal. Maybe you can close the gap and get it close. And still, it's not so far out. You might be able to get this down near 2.5 somewhere. I don't know. That is not so far off of a reasonable price there. 12.3% premium, 2.4 million is our value on the 2011 there, November 853 Charlie Alpha with 1,446 hours. It's in Canada. Sometimes the exchange rate's not that great. You'll see European aircraft sell for a lot more. Canadian aircraft, perhaps dollar's a lot stronger against their currency, and so they take a little bit of loss. Sometimes those aircraft sell for more. Plus, sometimes there's VATs and export taxes, and they try to earn that back when they sell the aircraft. 2012, 600 serial number 615, 747 hours on the airframe in Germany. This is listed at 2.85 million, and look at that. We valued at 2.425. That's an 18.75% premium. And that's what I told you on European aircraft. You're going to see premiums because of that exchange rate, because of the import taxes, the VAT taxes, the ferry expense in getting it there. But folks over in Europe will pay higher prices for those. So if you're in Europe, that may be less of a premium. These premiums we post what we believe would be the premium here in the US. Okay. Let's see here. All right, Kodiak Inventory. This is our first week. Candidly, we don't have a ton of experience with Kodiaks, actually nil, but we have some experience with caravans, and it's a very similar market. So we're going to use that for starters. We're going to kind of blend a hybrid of what our past experience has been with caravans and, say, Meridians and other turboprops. Knowing that this is more of a niche market than even a caravan. So some of these depreciation numbers might actually need to be increased. Although these companies put out less per year in terms of new aircraft, so maybe it's a net no change there. So this is a starting point. There could be some issues here. Let's talk about this together over time. Give us some feedback. But here's our preliminary look at it. And let's look at this. I mean, we're seeing some crazy premiums in our opinion, 62%. Wow. Let's see what's going on here. Let's just take a look at this one. We're just going to go over this one on this screen. Again, you can pause, rewind, come back to it. A 2009 Kodiak 769 Papa Kilo with 1,400 hours on it. Okay, no one's going to want that thing probably when it hits 3,000. So it's halfway to no one wants it anymore. 2009, heavily used. From what we can gather, brand new, that thing was just under $1.6 million 15 years ago. 15 years ago. And half of what we believe is its useful life, because there's just not a lot of buyers at 3,000 hours. It was going for 1.6 million. So how is it being listed for 1.95 now? I don't know. I'm at kind of a loss there. So yeah, we believe this thing should be around 1.2 million. That puts it at a 62% premium. Folks are asking a lot for these. Candidly, there aren't a lot on the market. So when there's not a lot on the market, you either can be patient and wait for them to lower their price, or you got to take what you can get. So that's our 2 cents on the Kodiak market. Cirrus Vision Jet market, we've got a reduction of $53,000 on this 2017, now dropped to 1.745 million. Our personal opinion is that aircraft's worth 1.315. That still puts it at a 36.7% premium. No other real changes on this screen here. Everything's pretty much stayed the same. Sellers have not lowered their prices. We still think the premiums are really high because there's so much inventory, and these aircraft are very well used and, 4, 5, 6 years old in some cases. Let's take a look at this next screen. We're still looking at 39% premiums, 58% premiums, 41% premiums based on standard depreciation kind of historical norms for other jets. So this is a question over time. I mean, the Cirrus Vision Jet is still new. Will it find a depreciation curve that is more similar to the historical norms of other jets, or will somehow it hold its value, and will we be wrong? I don't know. Only time is going to tell. What I can tell you is they make so many of these, it seems like, and there's so many on the aircraft, I don't see how they hold their value. It's why a Ferrari holds its value better than a Honda Civic, supply and demand. Mustang Inventory, $20,000 reduction. That's been there for a while on that 2010, 2,075,000. Look at this. We're not going to read a whole lot of these. All of these still have quite large premiums. The one on the bottom left there, they reduced it by $256,000, but it's almost got 3,000 hours on it now. So, what's it worth to you? It's in the eye of the beholder. The bottom right, this aircraft's been on the market for a while, the one at Colibri in the United Kingdom. From what we understand, there may or may not be corrosion on the aircraft, but it would be a good price if there's no issues and it passes an inspection. I mean, for a European price, it's a great price. For a United States price, it's a good price. It's decent. You can get them down to about 1.725, which you should be able to do that easily. If it's a well-maintained aircraft, it's a good buy, our opinion. But do your due diligence, consult your counsel. All right, on this screen, it looks like that 2009 there. I think that reduction was there before $200,000 down to 2.095 million. We still think, I mean, everything here is a premium. There's just not much talk about prices still aren't moving. But guess what? Neither are the aircraft, which means you all are standing strong with conviction. You're standing on the sidelines because these numbers are ridiculous and you're not willing to entertain them. We're right there along with you. And so hold the line. Eventually these prices have to cave because there's a reason they're sitting on the market so long, because buyers don't find value in them. Bottom right, that was a new listing last week, no change, 1.475 million. That thing has no programs and it's got 3,000 hours on it. So wow, that's probably the biggest premium we've seen on an aircraft. I mean, it's going to need an overhaul sooner than later. All right. And as always, you know, Mustangs were historically hard to sell. So that's why they get a little bit of a drop on the demand adjustment. Okay. Citation M2s, not much here. We've got a couple of good buys on the right side. We do got that reduction on that 2017 that they put in pretty much right after listing it of just $50,000. Still at quite a good premium, but guess what? Off the radar, not on controller, we are starting to see M2s drop in price. We just saw a few this last week. You know, we're going to try to maintain our broker relationship so we can get this cool information out to you. And so we got to be sensitive to what we say and specifically point out. But we've seen some M2s in the past week drop by $500,000. No joke. All honesty, $500,000. So it's happening. It's changing. All right. Bottom right-hand corner, this aircraft was reduced, I think, last week, $160,000. That's a good buy for 2021. You know, 2021's new were like 5.6 million. So the fact that they knocked off 700 grand for, you know, an aircraft that's a couple years old with 450 hours, that's reasonable. But in our opinion, the two aircraft you see on the right side are about the only somewhat reasonable aircraft as far as controller listed prices versus what we think they are actually worth. All right, 2019 here, we've got 4495. That's a reasonable value there. They reduced that $330K. The one on the right side at OCR, they dropped that $195,000. Still quite a large premium they are asking for. It is a year older, and it actually has the same amount of hours than the 2019. And they're asking the same price for it. So they're going to have to drop their price down. And then there'll be a little pricing war there, I think. All right, Honda Jet Inventory. We added a new aircraft here this week, the Elite S on the bottom right, 25.6% premium. We believe that aircraft, couple years old for a 2021, brand new, was 5.6 million, should drop at least a few hundred grand a year. So that should be a 600 grand drop and put us well into the fours. And then the fact that it has over 1,500 hours on it, already halfway to no one wants it, in our opinion. Yeah, that's got to bring it down more. On top of that, the Elite 2s, as we showed you back on that table, that the Elite 2s are going to have some cool things about it. And we didn't even mention the auto throttles or the safe landing system it's going to have on it as well. That's going to create downward pressure on the rest of the Honda Jet Elites as well. So if you're a Honda Jet buyer, man, as soon as those Elite 2s come out, if you're in the market for one of the previous models, I think there's going to be some better pricing at that point in time. My opinion, if we get interest rate hikes and continued increase in the supply chain. CJ3 Plus inventory, we're going to turn things orange when they disappear. We can't always tell when they sell it or not. A lot of times they pop back up a week or two later when the seller or the broker realizes, oh no, my controller ad expired, and they put it back online, or the seller gets sick of the broker and gives it to somebody else because they think the broker is doing a bad job or something. So we're going to kind of freeze it right there and watch it and see what happens. But right now, today, we did not spot those two aircraft on controller. All right, look at this. CJ3 Pluses are starting to have some decent prices. Left-hand side, under 10% premiums. So that's great. And on the bottom right-hand corner, That 2017 was reduced $295,000 down to 8.2 million. Still a healthy high premium, or unhealthy in our opinion. At 19.2%, we want to see that aircraft come down some more before it, we think it becomes reasonably priced. This 2022, they dropped it 50 grand to 10,050,000. We think it's worth 9.54 million, just outside of our fair buy range of 10% at 10.5% on the premium. And then this one at Eagle, the 2019, 8.295 million. We believe that's worth about 8, which puts it at a premium of about 15.6%. So not so far off. All right, we just had to pause there for a second because actually we're going to have to change this data. This is actually only 3 some odd percent. So 8 million, 8.295, that's not a bad buy for that aircraft. That is a reasonable purchase right around the $8 million mark. So we're going to change colors on that because that is a decent buy. Okay, moving along to the CJ4 inventory now. Sorry, advance forward too much. Again, we got a freeze out there. We're going to let it sit there. CJ4 premiums are still really high in the high double digits, over 20% on the premiums. We don't see that holding. CJ4 is historically a very niche market. That's why they also get kind of a toxic demand adjustment, in our opinion. They're very much pro-pilot aircraft with the ProLine 21s inside. You don't get a whole lot of owner pilots flying those, and so you lose a decent chunk of the market that wants to buy those usually. Phenom 300 inventory recap. Look, we finally got some price reductions on Phenom 300s. The 2014 at the top there was 1,700 hours on it, November 454 Tango X-ray. 8.1 million is the ask. We think that's somewhere around 6.750 million. Still has a 20% premium, but check it out. They dropped that aircraft by $600,000. They are wanting to get rid of that aircraft. So that's good news. That's going to help put downward pressure on everything else too. Thank you, QS, for posting that price out there. Help bring the market, move aircraft. Good for you guys, good for us buyers. 2014 on the right, 7.95 million is asked. They just reduced that 150 grand. We believe fair market's about 6.1. That's a 30% premium. The 2011, they dropped 145 grand. We believe that's a 27% premium. We think that's worth more around 5.8 million because it's almost has 3,000 hours on it. The 2012 on the right, 7,995. We believe that's worth about 6.5. And that's a 23% premium. Bottom two, 38.6% premium and a 28% premium. All right, this is a good one. This is a new one this week because this is a good example of, what brokers do and the kind of transparency. We're just trying to be the other side. We're not against brokers. We're not against broker relationships. Look, I've done a lot of business with brokers. I've had a lot of brokers really help me out and do some great things for me. But I've also had brokers lie to me. I've had brokers watch out for their own interests instead of mine. And so because we have plenty of voice and speak out there from the broker side, from the VREFs and the controller side and the seller side, and there's no real voice for buyers, we're trying to create a voice for buyers. And so this is what I want to say here. This is nothing against this broker, but take a look at this ad, right? This is classic broker tactic, my opinion. This week only, $6.65 million if you want to swap with the buyer, because the buyer's having trouble. It's under contract, but the buyer, if you read the details, can't get financing. Why can't get the financing? Probably because the bank doesn't like the price. The bank probably looks at a 2013 Phenom 300 with 3,000 hours on it, just like we do, and says, you know what? I don't think 6.65 million is a great price. I think that gives us negative equity, and we're already worried about interest rates. No thanks. We don't want to lend this money. And so here, this gives some more credence to our valuations that they may not be so far off because look, this guy's having financing issues. So what I like here is the broker kind of actually maybe made a little bit of mistake telling the world that this guy's having financing issues. Now, that's usually one of two reasons. Usually the guy's got problems or the bank doesn't like the number. And I think right now, judged by how high airplanes are at, I'm going to say at least part of it is the bank probably doesn't like the number. So this tactic here, this is what brokers are supposed to do. When they represent you as a seller, they're supposed to create a sense of urgency in the market. Oh my gosh, you've got to pick this up right now. This is the only aircraft like this on the market. You're never going to see a better specimen. The paint job, the interior, oh my God, mwah, it's perfect. You've got to pick this up now. That's what a broker's supposed to do. Do I believe this? No. Would I jump on this? No. I don't think it's worth that. It's got 3,200 hours on it. So you're doing your job and you're representing your client well, but no thank you. All right, the 2012 Embraer 300, 2,800 hours on it, super close to 3,000 yen. Who wants it? It's old, it's spent, 7.895 million. Who wants to spend $8 million on something so used? 6.5 million, you might find some buyers. Anybody who's got 8 wants a new aircraft. Probably anybody who has 6.5 wants a new aircraft, but 2021, 12.99. Ooh, now look at that. Newer aircraft, maybe you're not so far off on the premium, 14.4%. We value that at about 9, not so far off, but are you going to get them to drop it by, whatever that is, 3.5 million, 3.9 million? Probably not. Probably not. All right, so that is it. That covers all of our aircraft, and that is This Week in Controller. Thank you for joining us. What you have left here is a snapshot of all of the aircraft in those categories we just went over on Controller this Friday, October 20th, 2023. Thank you for joining us. Thanks once again to John, Mark, and Racer, and Hal, and Ken for sending us some emails and writing some comments. We appreciate it. Please keep them coming, everyone, and let us know how we can help you create more transparency for all of us in this market. Take care. Y'all have a wonderful weekend.